Hi, everybody. Welcome on. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. So, today, as you can tell, we are going to be doing an intro to a keto diet today. So, this is going to be a part one. So, a little bit about this series if you're new. We're doing some weekly series here on the app, just working on some, nutrition education principles and, discussing some fun topics like the keto diet. If this is your first time, welcome. If you've been to our previous ones, welcome back. Last week we talked about fasting, and the week before we talked about pre-diabetes. And so we are able to record these now. So after this talk, once the recording's done, it will be available in the live stream. So in this series, we really do want this to be as interactive as it can be. So even though you guys can't, directly talk to me, feel free to ask questions. There's a question bar at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and ask any questions you have about the keto diet. And then if you don't have any questions, still go ahead and check out those questions, because if you think one of them is good and you really want the answer, if you go ahead and upvote that, it just increases the likelihood that we will see it and I will be able to answer it. And I made these slides so that they would, fit the size of your phone. So if you want a screenshot, go ahead. So a little bit about me. My name is Mary. I'm a registered dietitian and I have a master's degree in nutrition. I have over 4 years of experience in the health and nutrition field, and I currently work in research. So hopefully you guys learn a little something today from me. So as we showed and I said earlier, today is going to be a part one, and we're going to be discussing an intro to a keto diet. So this is a really huge topic, so we decided to separate it into two different talks. So today is really going to be an overarching topic, an overarching look at the keto diet. We'll kind of answer some questions like, well, what is keto? What's ketosis? What are the benefits of doing the keto diet? Like, why would people do this? And then what's that relationship? A lot of people do this for weight loss. So how does ketosis lead to weight loss? We'll discuss some risk factors at the end. I always like touching on that. But it's just going to be a big intro. Next week is when we're going to dive in a little bit more in depth to strategies and how to do the keto diet in your life. So we'll talk a little bit more about foods, maybe what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat. We'll dive into some supplements, stuff like that. That will all be in the next talk. All right. So first we got to lay that foundation, right? What is the keto diet? So the keto diet itself is a very low carb, high fat diet. So you'd eat about 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day. The typical diet is closer to that, like 100, 150. So you can see that this is way lower at the 20 to 50 grams. When you severely restrict your carbs like this and you really, really limit how many carbohydrates you eat, this switches your body into something called ketosis, and it switches the way that your body produces energy. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. I also tried to include as many pictures as I can to reinforce what types of foods are going to be good on the keto diet. So like it says up there, we want low carb, high fat foods. So this is going to be our things like our oils, our eggs, our fish, nuts, seeds, stuff like that. All right, so what is ketosis? What does that even mean? So I really like this picture down here. It kind of shows, it gives a good example of the difference between ketosis and our normal energy metabolism. So on the left side, we see glucose. So normally, in a normal state, every day, we typically burn glucose as fuel. And so fuel, that's like kind of what creates our energy. And that's our main energy source, is going to be glucose. And we see here, glucose comes from carbohydrates. So if we want to switch the way that our body burns fuel and we want to switch it to fat, we need to really, really limit those carbs. But when we limit those carbs, and it says here on that right side with the ketones, we need to make sure we have an adequate presence of fat. We need to make sure we're eating enough fat. So it's not just limiting the carbs and that's it. You want to limit carbs and increase fat. And so when we do that, when we limit the carbs, we increase the fat, it switches our fuel source. So instead of our fuel source being glucose, our fuel source is now ketones. And when we burn ketones for fuel, that is called ketosis. And so ketones for fuel happens by burning fat. So that's kind of how that all works. Basically, we want to eat less carbs and replace it with fat. That's going to be the key thing here that's going to drive us into ketosis. And if there's one thing I want you to remember from today's talk, it would be less carbs, but we have to replace it with fat. And that's how we get into ketosis. So what are the benefits of a keto diet? Why would we even want to do it? Well, there's actually a lot of benefits to switching over to this type of diet. So initially, the keto diet was created as a way to treat epilepsy. Researchers, this is around the 1920s, they started experimenting with different types of diets to treat epilepsy, and they found that a keto diet, a very low carb and a high fat diet, was working wonders for these people with epilepsy. Then research started to notice that, wait, people are also losing weight on this. Maybe there's something to it. And so now, modern times or today, people typically use the keto diet. It's gotten a lot of, press and recognition for being a great weight loss diet. So it works. There's been a lot of studies too that have shown that this keto diet is really great for weight loss. But the key to this is you have to stick to it, and it has to be fully that low carb and that high fat. So you have to stick to the rules of the keto diet for a certain amount of time. And so a lot of studies have shown that this has led to weight loss. And there have been studies that have compared the keto diet to a low fat or just a regular low carb diet. And the keto diet actually was better at weight loss, where people were losing up to like 2 pounds more on average when compared to those other diets. So as we can see here too, if you just zoom in on these little pictures right here, it does list some great health benefits for the keto diet as well. Like we talked about with weight loss. Another way the keto diet leads to weight loss, one reason is because it tends to lower our appetite when we're we're mostly eating fats and proteins. That tends to suppress appetite. So that's one reason why that works. And also has shown some great benefits with heart disease too. When we lose fat in the keto diet, it tends to be that fat around our waist, which has been associated with heart disease. It lowers triglyceride levels, and it's good at increasing our good cholesterol levels. And it also has been shown to help reduce the risk of diabetes, because when we're not eating as much glucose or carbohydrates and it's not leading to glucose, it can lower our blood sugar and insulin levels and help prevent diabetes. So this topic I'm mostly going to cover in the next week, but I do think it's still important to kind of present it a little bit today. So when we think of a keto diet, we can think of these 3 things. We want to prioritize our high-fat foods. We want to keep our protein the same, and we want to eat very low carb. So if we look down, I love this picture below because I also like it how it presents the percentages on the side. So we see the carbs we want to keep really low in that 5 to 10% range. And this is our calories for the overall day, right? So only about 5 to 10% of our calories. If we go down a step below, we see the protein. This is going to be like our meats and cheeses and stuff like that. We see 20 to 25%. So one thing about the keto diet is that we don't want to really increase our protein intake. A 20 to 25% for protein is pretty normal. That's like a normal, healthy range of protein intake. So it doesn't change in the keto diet. And this is because protein, like carbs, can be turned into glucose for energy. And in our keto diet, we don't want glucose to be turned into energy. We want that to be turned into energy. So that's why we want to keep that protein. We're not increasing that a ton. We still want to keep that at a normal level because it also turns into glucose. And then the bottom of that pyramid, we see the biggest chunk, 70 to 80% of our calories are going to be from fat. So that's going to be nuts, seeds, avocado, fish, oils, stuff like that. And then really quickly, we do want to avoid high carb foods. If we're only given, for example, if we're only given 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day, we don't want to waste that on one bagel. We want to be able to eat some veggies, maybe a little bit of fruit throughout the day, and not just that one bagel and not be allowed any more carbs the rest of the day. So those high carb foods we're going to want to avoid. Again, all of this I will dive into a little bit deeper in the next talk. I just wanted to give this really big overview. In the keto diet, we're thinking high fat, low carb, medium protein. So I also think it's important when we talk about these diets to kind of think about, well, are there any risks to these diets? So if you're a normal, healthy person, there won't really be any risk for you and you can try a keto diet. There have been some studies, though, I think this is important to mention, that there have been some studies that have shown the negative effects of being on a keto diet for an extended period of time. Meaning, we don't typically want to be on a keto diet for longer than a year. You're not entering keto diet because this is the way you're going to eat forever and the rest of time. That's not typically a very healthy thing for our bodies. And that's because of these things right here. Being on keto for an extended period of time, we might find some protein in our blood, extra fat on our livers. Both of those things we do not want in those locations excessively. Being on the keto diet can increase your risk for being on the keto diet for a long time, can increase your risk for kidney stones as well as micronutrient deficiencies. With the micronutrient deficiencies, you might be able to do some supplements and things like that. Again, that I will talk about next time. And this important stipulation at the bottom, if you do have diabetes, currently have diabetes, you would want to talk to your doctor before you start a keto diet. And this is because some of the medications that you may be on can be negatively impacted by the keto diet. And so if you're on those medications and you do have a keto diet, it can leave you susceptible for something called diabetic ketoacidosis, which can be life-threatening. So this is always something, especially because diabetes is a condition that is so related to what you eat. Diabetes in particular, I would talk to your doctor before starting a keto diet. All right, so you know the benefits, you know the risks, you've decided I want to do the keto diet. How do I know when I'm in ketosis? So this is a really, interesting thing to know. There are certain symptoms that are that will indicate that you've entered ketosis, and this is usually going to come up in the first couple days to it might take a week. Because if you think about it, you are, by doing this diet, completely changing the way your body creates energy. That is a really big process, and it can take a little bit of time, and it is not without side effects. So this may include increased thirst, dry mouth, frequent urination, and decreased hunger and appetite. These are going to be some things that you might start noticing, like, oh, I might be in ketosis now, because it might, like I said, take a few days. Immediately when you start a keto diet, you may notice that you lose weight right off the bat. Like your first week, second week, you lose 8 pounds. And then you might notice that you start to plateau and maybe you're only losing a pound a week, 2 pounds a week. I just want to mention that that doesn't mean it's not working anymore once you hit that plateau, because that immediate weight loss is not that so much yet. It's going to be water weight. So like how we talked about, your body typically burns glucose as fuel, right? Well, that glucose that's floating around in the blood, not being used for fuel yet, it's called glycogen, and it has water on it. So when you start burning away all that and not replacing it, and all that glycogen is gone from your blood and from your liver, so is all that water. So that first week when you're on a keto diet, that weight loss you're going to experience is typically water weight. So when you start plateauing, it doesn't mean it doesn't work anymore. All right. And what are some symptoms, like you're in ketosis? What is my first week going to look like? So, like I said, starting a keto diet can be really healthy for most people, but there will be some symptoms that you'll experience when your body goes through that huge adaptation of changing fuel sources. So a lot of people experience this as the keto flu. This includes things like diarrhea, constipation, nausea, vomiting, stuff like that. Just not feeling well, sleep issues. This happens. This happens in about 30% of people who start the keto diet. Once you're in ketosis, you might get that keto flu. So this is totally normal, and it typically goes away in a few days. One thing I do really just want to mention, especially with the maybe constipation and some digestive discomfort, when you're almost completely cutting out carbs from your diet, carbs are a huge source of fiber in our diet. So getting rid of that is really cutting back on our fiber. So you might notice you're not as regular, you might get constipated, that might be a little uncomfortable. That's totally normal. You might want to try some sort of fiber supplements or something like that, but we will talk about that next week. But that is just a reality of switching up your diet so much. All right, so my final thoughts. So my thoughts with diets is try it. Different things work for different people. You never know. You might as well just try it, right? If you're really curious about it. The thing with the keto diet is you have to make sure you try it correctly. You have to make sure you're eating enough fat, you really decrease those carbs, or you're not really in a keto diet, you're just on a low fat diet or a low carb diet. So try it correctly. There are definitely some pros to trying the keto diet. It's nice that you're not thinking about calorie restriction and that you don't really have to count calories or keep a food diary or anything like that. That's really convenient. And it does work. So the science does say that there's a lot of science supporting that it does work for weight loss. And when I was looking through some stuff to put together this presentation, there's so many resources out there, so many, that makes it a lot easier. Honestly, there's a billion different recipes out there. I would suggest, if you are looking for recipes, you find someone who's a dietitian, because that way the carbohydrate and the protein and the fat macronutrients are all going to be what they should be. It'll be planned out pretty well. However, this is a great diet, but there are some cons to this. It can be difficult to start, especially with all those symptoms I just rattled off on that last slide. But there are some ways to kind of work through that, and it doesn't last that long. I think diet and how we eat is a huge quality of life thing. And so I think a keto diet might be kind of difficult when you're trying to eat with other people or you going out to eat. It can be really hard, especially if they aren't keto, because it is so restrictive. And lastly, this is not a diet you want to be on for the rest of time. It's just not a really great long-term option for most healthy people. So, it is something you kind of have to totally overhaul how you eat, and then it's only a short period of time. So I see that as a con as well. But we will talk about strategies and how to make this easier, especially that second bullet in the con section about eating with other people. That is going to be a topic for our next talk as well, because I think that's important to go over. All right, so that is it today. Did we have any questions in the chat?
Really great points. Really great talk. Loved all the points you made. Really well laid out. I don't know if we can see it. The audience can actually see you if you want to put to the camera mode, and then I can kind of go over the questions. So the first question we have is, I've been doing keto for the last few months and have lost 4 kilograms, but now my weight is fluctuating. Any ideas would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. So next week is we're going to talk a little bit more about strategies so we can really dive in, because my first point and when I was researching this, what I saw is that you might just be eating a little bit too many carbs or not enough fat. It really is that fine balance that's going to push you into ketosis. So that would be my first part, my first response to that. So next week, maybe we can even go over how do I know how many carbs? How do I know how much fat? So we can make sure you're in that right balance. And then it also could just be sometimes these diets, you just plateau a little bit. If you only been doing it, what was it, 6 months?
For the last, they mentioned that for the last few months.
Okay, I would just maybe try a few more months and see if it changes at all.
Okay. The next question is, my 14-year-old cousin wants to go on a diet. I don't know if she should. Do you have any advice on if she should, or what could I say to her? And by the way, I think if other people have questions, feel free. We have an expert on the call for the next few minutes. So if there's other questions that you may have that's not in the question list, feel free to add. We do have the next 10 to 15 minutes, and this is all for our members. So feel free to use that. Sorry for the promo.
Oh, no, you're fine. So that's a great question. So when it comes to children, I'm just going to say it's anyone under 18, expecting that they're still growing. I mean, by the time she's 14, but so a diet, especially one like this, would not be my first recommendation. My first recommendation would be an overall healthy diet, prioritizing fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and physical activity. That is going to be a huge one for people, especially teens, is going to be that physical activity. Always just trying to increase it as much as we can. So that would be my first recommendation before I start trying to get into these restrictive dieting. Because especially with the keto diet, it's not something we want long term. So when we have our 14-year-old children, niece, sister, we want them making choices that are going to be for the rest of their lives, setting up healthy lifestyles. So that would be and the keto diet is just, you're not going to be on it for that long. So that would be my recommendation. That was a great question.
So the last question I see is, actually, someone just posted another question.
Great.
Is it healthy to eat more fat? I used to hear that eating fat is bad for your health, and now keto is popular. And I want to try it, but I'm worried about the health risk. So this was posted before you mentioned the health risk, but maybe good to recap it regardless.
Definitely. So I know that is when I first learned about the keto diet, being a dietitian, where they're like fat can be bad. It took me a while to come around to it, definitely. So it depends on the type of fat. Fat is really one of those macronutrients that there's a huge divide between our really healthy fats and our not so healthy fats. So in the keto diet, you would really want to emphasize healthy fats. Those are going to be your unsaturated fatty acids, our monounsaturated and our polyunsaturated. We would find that in sources like oils, avocado, fish, nuts, seeds, stuff like that. Those are going to be when we have a keto diet and we're really focusing on those fats, it can be really healthy. Our our not so healthy fats are going to be our saturated fats. So that we're thinking like butter, like fried foods, the really fatty meats, stuff like that. Those are going to be the fats that are the probably the most associated with those heart conditions and heart health and everything like that. Those are the fats that we're going to want to try to limit just in general in any diet that we try. Um, so yeah, that's how I would answer that. Is it really kind of depends on where we're getting our fat sources from.
Education. And we have another really good question. You said it is better not to go with keto for more than 1 year. Is
Mhm.
there any optimal duration for trying keto?
That is a great question. So that was something that came up so many times when I was researching this presentation. We don't want to do keto a long term. So then my natural next question, and so was yours, was okay, well, how long do we want to do it? And the science is not very secure on that yet. We know a year might be a little bit too long. So, but we want to make sure we're on it long enough to see the benefits of the weight loss. So, I would say 6 months. That was something that I saw come up a couple other times. So, this might be just almost like personal preference at this point, because the science really isn't super strong on that question yet. So, that was a great question because I also am not super sure either. I had the same question. I would say about 6 months.
We're at time. I don't see any more questions. Thank you for a really amazing talk. Really enjoyed all the points, and we're gonna do definitely a follow-up session because I know a lot of people, are struggling with this. So thank you for that. We have another session, I believe, on Monday that's going to be around the psychology series. So I'm also very, very excited about that one. So please stay tuned. We have a bunch of good speakers lined up for you. And thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Bye.